Thank you to everyone who has been able to join so far. If you wouldn't mind putting your name, title, and organization into the chat box, it helps us get a good feel of who's on today's webinar. We still have a few minutes before the top of the hour, so I will start in just a little bit, but thank you for being here so far. Hello, Suzanne. Just want to confirm with you that you see the slide controls again, and you can start after I do your intro.
Good morning. It's good to see you, Caleb. And yes, I do see it.
Okay, perfect. Get started at the top of the hour.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Right, I have 10 o'clock on the dot, got the recording started. So again, hello, and thank you everyone for joining us on today's webinar. We will be learning more about federal grants. The webinar today is being recorded and will be posted to our website. We will send the recording and the slides to all participants at the end of this series around noon today. My name is Caleb Zinski, and I'm the program coordinator with the National Rural Health Resource Center, which is providing the webinar. Your audio is muted by default to avoid background noise and feedback. Please remain muted unless you have a question. To unmute your line, please select the microphone icon in the lower left corner of your screen. And if you called in, you can press *6 to unmute your line. You can also communicate through the chat box, which is located in the bottom right in the middle of your screen. If you haven't already, please take a moment to type your name, title, and organization into the chat box so we know who is joining us today. The National Rural Health Resource Center is a nonprofit organization dedicated to sustaining and improving rural health in rural communities. The center is the TA provider for the Delta Region Community Health Systems Development Program. The Delta Region Community Health Systems Development Program is funded by the Federal Office of Rural Health Policy in collaboration with the Delta Regional Authority. The center is committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism, and building a culture where difference is valued. You may learn more about our commitment on our website. As I did on Tuesday, I'm going to go ahead and get some polls started here. Launch the pre-polling that helps us measure knowledge gained on the webinars. Go ahead and fill that out at your convenience if you wouldn't mind. And as we did on Tuesday, we have the lovely Suzanne Snyder with us. Suzanne Snyder is a public health analyst in the Hospital State Division at the Federal Office of Rural Health Policy. She is the program coordinator at the Delta Region Community Health Systems Development Program and a project officer for the State Office of Rural Health Grant Program. Thank you so much, Suzanne, for being with us today, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Caleb. I appreciate you. Thanks for the intro. It is so wonderful to be able to be with y'all this morning. I'm really excited about today. If you weren't here Tuesday, I did a walkthrough on the Federal Office of Rural Health Policy and kind of our structure and mostly programs and resources that are most relevant to you and your work. And so today, what I thought would be helpful is to talk a little bit more about the federal grants application process. and finding federal grants. So that way, if there was something that caught your eye on Tuesday and the programs I talked about, then you can be better prepared to go for that funding opportunity as it becomes available. I do want to preface by telling you that I'm not the expert in anything that I'm going to be talking about today, but definitely hoping to have some time at the end of my presentation to answer questions that you might have, or at least write down questions that you have for me to go find the answers for you, either which way, but really excited to be able to share the presentation I have for you today. All right, so here is what we're going to take a look at today. First, how to apply for grants, federal grants, that is. Then how to search and find those funding opportunities. We'll talk about notice of funding opportunities, or what we typically call NOFOs within HRSA, and how to read those. We'll talk a little bit about the HRSA grant application review process and give a little bit of information on common mistakes and kind of some application tips that we have. And like I said, hopefully have some time for questions at the end here. So let's start with how to apply for federal grant funding. So in order to apply for federal funding, there are two different systems in which you need to register. Those two systems are the System for Award Management, or what is known as SAM, and grants.gov. As you can see on this slide here, SAM is used to designate an e-business point of contact, which we'll chat more about in just a bit. And registering with SAM is required for organizations to then be able to use grants.gov. So as you can see here, grants.gov is where you can search for and you can find federal grant opportunities, and it's where you actually submit your applications for those funding opportunities. I have links for each of these websites on the slide with some of the tech support information as well. Take a picture of it if you've got your cell phone handy, but I know these slides will be shared after the fact too. One thing I wanted to note for folks who have been around for a while, who've applied for federal funding in the past, another system that you might have heard of or might have used before is called DUNS. As of April 4th of 2022, the federal government stopped using DUNS numbers. The DUNS numbers was replaced by a new identifier that is provided by SAM.gov called the Unique Entity Identifier, or UEI, sometimes referred to as the Entity ID. So just a note for you, if you thought there was some other system out there, there was, but it's now been replaced. So the first system is, as I said, the System for Award Management, or what we refer to as SAM, SAM.gov. It is a central database that includes information about government funding opportunities. And in order to do business with any federal government agency, you have to complete SAM registration. One thing I do want to note is it is 100% free. Just want to put that out there because there can be a lot of scams out there trying to get money from you. This SAM.gov is totally free for registration. There is a difference between signing up for SAM and registering in SAM. So signing up means that you're getting an account and you're setting up a profile on SAM.gov, whereas registering means that you're registering an entity to do business with the government on SAM.gov. So just know that there is that difference and that you have to do both of those steps if you want to apply for federal funding. So once you've signed up and you've signed into your account, you can use the many different features that SAM.gov has, like searches, following specific records. You can even view standard reports on there, but you must register your entity, whether it's as an individual or an organization, to be able to bid on contracts, federal contracts, or apply for any federal funding opportunities. And another really important note is you do need to renew your registration annually. That's something that will come up. And the helpful tips and the common mistakes we see is folks, it's just hard to remember sometimes to register, renew that registration, but that is something that you have to do every year. So here's a screenshot for the homepage for SAM.gov. You'll see that there are links here to register as a new SAM user or to renew yourself as an existing SAM user. After you're successfully registered, You will establish what's called an e-business point of contact, or e-biz POC. The e-biz POC should be the individual who oversees all activities for your organization within grants.gov and approves the authorized organization representative, or what we call AOR. So basically, the person you want to be behind the driver's wheel is how I like to say it, who can access everything, and that person can then grant access to others in your organization as well. You should receive what is called your unique entity identifier that I mentioned earlier, UEI, from SAM approximately 7 to 10 business days after completely registering, including submitting a notarized letter to SAM. Just another note again, sam.gov, 100% free. You do not need to pay any external party to register for sam.gov. Okay, so a little more on some of these roles and the pieces to sam.gov. So I mentioned that the eBiz POC, they're kind of the driver in the car. They play a really critical role in grants.gov registration and the application process. There's also something called a marketing partner ID number, or MPIN password, that is created by the eBiz POC. This is the number used to log in to grants.gov to designate authorized organization representatives, or AORs. And AORs are folks from your organization who would be authorized to submit applications on behalf of your organization. So that could be several different people. All right, so you have fully completed the sam.gov registration. You have your unique entity identifier, or UEI. So now onto grants.gov registration. You'll see screenshots of the website on the screen that indicate the registration steps. This website interface has just changed a little bit, but it should look similar to kind of what you see on the screen here as far as registration goes. If you're a new registrant, then you should use steps 2 and 3. So you can see on the screen there. If you're an existing grants.gov user, you can log in at the top of the right corner of the web page, as noted by 1 on this slide. And once you're registered, you can search for federal grants and funding opportunities, and then you can actually complete and submit applications. I did want to note that you don't have to be registered or logged into grants.gov to be able to view the different funding opportunities that you'll find on there, but you do have to be registered and logged in to actually apply for those federal grant opportunities. So just a couple more notes on grants.gov roles and the different pieces here. AORs must complete profiles of grants.gov using that UEI number after registering in SAM. eBiz POCs must log in to grants.gov to approve their AOR's registration. AORs, with their registration, it must be updated annually, and AOR passwords must be updated every 90 days. And I've also included a video on this slide that you can take a look at just when you have some time, that will kind of help you with this process. We'll walk you through each of these steps to register on grants.gov. Okay. So that takes care of.
Can I jump in quick? Just
Sure.
super fast. I just wanted to
Go
make
for
a
it.
note. Yeah. So welcome everybody. Just wanted to make a note too, going back to even like the slides 8 through 10 that Suzanne just covered. I would highly recommend as a tip to have a point person at your facility have this on their responsibility, and maybe, put it on their calendar to check this annually. We did have a site in cohort 2019, amazing site, amazing hospital, that was applying for a grant and had thought that all of this was up to date, and it wasn't, and it was it ended up being very stressful and kind of last minute, nick of time, skin of the teeth, because this doesn't turn over just automatically when you register. So I would highly recommend making sure you have a point person who checks this annually, make sure that you're totally up to date, and so if an opportunity becomes available, you're well positioned to just go ahead and apply for it. Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Suzanne.
No, thank you for cutting in, Kate. I really appreciate you saying that because I remember that instance and it was extremely stressful for all parties involved. And I don't want any of y'all to be in that place. I might even recommend put it on a calendar, your work calendar of every year. There's, after you register, update that registration, just a reminder to check on that registration, because that is truly one of the most common mistakes that we see. And I would really, really hate for that to be the thing that keeps you from a grant opportunity. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in a minute too, when we get to notice of funding opportunities, but there's typically 60 to 90 days, I would say, usually that you have for when a grant opportunity becomes available or applications become open on grants.gov and when the due date is for those applications. So it might sound like a lot of time to me. It sounds like the blink of an eye when you're trying to pull together an application, and just with all of the effort that goes into that work of getting your grant application together, I just really hate for it to be a technicality as the thing that keeps you from grant funding. So I appreciate you, Kate. Thank you for emphasizing that even further. So, all right. You've got your SAM.gov registration with your UEI. You've registered your folks in grants.gov. You're good to go as far as all that's concerned. So now where do you go? How do you find grant funding, federal grant funding? There are a couple different spots out there to find funding, and I'm going to show you how to do it on our HRSA website along with grants.gov. And I believe I have a couple other links for different sites too for you to check out as well. One that I mentioned on Tuesday was the Rural Health Information Hub, or RHI Hub. They tend to be a really great spot to be able to find federal funding as well. So first for HRSA though, our website. So if you go to HRSA.gov and you click on grants in the top left and then click on find funding, you should see the page that I have screenshotted on the left-hand side of the screen here on this slide. Did want to note that there are some important links on the left-hand panel that you might find helpful as well, like application process or tracking your application. There's also some helpful information on managing your grant and some of the FAQs. But in the middle of the screen, you should see a search feature for you to be able to search for all of the funding opportunities coming out of HRSA specifically. So not just within the Federal Office of Rural Health Policy, but funding opportunities from all of our 18 offices and bureaus combined. So on the right-hand side of that screen, you'll see that I typed in rural as a keyword in my search. And so that brought up opportunities that are connected to rural in some way. You could have also searched for FORHP, or you could have searched for the status of a funding opportunity, like if it's open or closed. So then for my search, I can click on any of those opportunities that populate, and it will take me to the web page that offers very high level information and details about any specific funding opportunity that you click on, as well as a link to the opportunity in grants.gov, which, if you remember, that is where you have to go to actually apply for the funding, as well as a link to, it includes an email for the program contact for the funding opportunity, in the case that you have questions about it as you're working on your grant application. Now, if you would prefer to use grants.gov directly to search for grants, I'll show you that process here. Let's see. This is just the homepage that you see for grants.gov, and you will first select search grants in the top left panel of the screen. And I think I've got, yep, there we go. Nice little animation to show you where it says search grants. Okay, so from there, you're going to be taken to the search page where you will have a ton of different search capabilities, like searching by keywords. You can search by the actual opportunity number itself. You can filter your search by the agency, who's funding the program, or eligibility, among a lot of different other types of filters. And so I typed in HRSA, and I was looking for the opportunity that I mentioned on Tuesday that's actually open right now, the Rural Health Network Development Planning Program, which you can see at the bottom of the screen here, populated for me. Okay, so after I click on that opportunity, the network planning grant that was listed there, I'm then taken to the grants.gov webpage for this opportunity itself. When you view the grant opportunity on grants.gov, it's typically the synopsis tab that's displayed first, which again, just kind of those high level details. You need to click on the package tab to preview and download the notice of funding opportunity, which is essentially your instructions for completing your application for the grant opportunity. After you open the package tab, you click on preview to view the instructions. So that's over there on the right hand side of the screen. I've got circled. And then you click download instructions to download a PDF version of the notice of funding opportunity. You'll notice that on the left-hand side are all of the other mandatory forms that are needed for the application. So you should, everything that you need to complete your application, you should find on that page in terms of forms and things like that. You can also click on related documents, that tab, to view the HRSA specific documents, and you can use this tab to download the notice of funding opportunity attachment as well, again, as a PDF. So just showing you two different spots within the grants.gov web page for that specific opportunity that you can find the notice of funding opportunity. If you're interested in federal grants, I would recommend that you subscribe. You can subscribe as an individual or as an organization, and you can manage your subscription so that you can receive updates that are based on specific topics or keywords, agencies, as well as receiving alerts about new posted grants or forecasted grants. There's also a number of tutorials available on the grants.gov website if you're looking for some support and how to apply for different grants or how to navigate the website. Also, I think I mentioned this, but if you're looking for a specific funding opportunity and it's not technically released yet, but it's just forecasted, you can subscribe to receive updates for that specific NOFO, so that you'll be notified once that notice of funding opportunity or NOFO is officially released and accepting applications. One last note on grants.gov is I've included some information on what's called Workspace, which is the platform on grants.gov that you use to apply for a grant opportunity. This is where you complete forms for the application, submit your document pieces of your application, things like that. I would definitely recommend checking out the video that I've linked on this slide, which should link you to other Workspace videos that might be of help to you as well as you're figuring out how to navigate this to apply for funding. Okay, so we're registered in SAM, we're registered in grants.gov. We have found just the right opportunity that we want to apply for. What even is a notice of funding opportunity or a NOFO? Let's walk through this a little bit. Essentially, NOFOs are the announcement for a funding opportunity, whether it be for a grant, a cooperative agreement. One thing I will mention is that different federal agencies have different names for their funding announcements. Something I've heard from other federal agencies is funding opportunity announcement, so FOA, among some other names that they might have. For HRSA, we call them NOFOs. And what you're going to find in a NOFO is an explanation of the available funding, the program. You'll find eligibility information and then application information. So it includes what you need to know to be able to apply for the funding and really important program contacts in case you have any questions or any trouble as you're working on your grant application. Here is a table of contents from a NOFO. I've listed out what those different pieces are a little bit larger on the right side of the screen, just to kind of show those different sections that you'll commonly see inside of a NOFO. A great thing about our NOFOs at HRSA is that the table of contents is hyperlinked so that you can get around relatively quickly to a particular section in a NOFO. Hopefully it's helpful. They do tend to be a little bit lengthy, so we try to make it as easy as we can, at least, to be able to navigate these NOFOs. So as you can see on the screen, the kind of information you're going to find in a NOFO includes program funding opportunity description, award information. So how much money are we really talking for the grant? Eligibility information, who can apply, who it's intended for. Application and submission information. So all of the different pieces that you need to include in your application. It includes application review information. So information on how your application will be reviewed and what that process looks like, how many points go to which sections of your application and things like that. You'll have your award administration information. So once folks are awarded, what that process looks like. And then you'll also have agency contacts, including, as I've mentioned, your program contacts. So the person on the programmatic side who can answer questions for you. And then there's also a fiscal contact as well. So what we call our grants management specialist, basically the person who can answer more of those budgetary types of questions that you might have as you're working on pulling together your grant application. So starting first with the executive summary, that's what you're going to find at the beginning of a notice of funding opportunity. I definitely encourage you to use these summaries as you're searching for funding, because it often gives just those really high level key details for you to know if you're eligible for funding or if the funding best fits your organization. And I've included an example here from the Network Development Planning program for your reference. These summaries tend to include the name of the program or the title of the program, the funding opportunity number, application due dates, very, very important date to have in your mind for any grant application you're applying for, the purpose and objectives of the program, who's eligible applicants, the amount of funding that is available dollar wise, and including the number of awards that are linked to any given opportunity. If there's any cost sharing or match requirement, then that's typically listed in that executive summary, along with the project period. So how long the grant is for, if it's 1 year, 2 year, 3 or 4, and any agency contacts, like I mentioned before. So basically your HRSA contacts that can help you with any questions you've got. All right, so wanted to highlight that the NOFO tells you exactly what to respond to. It includes what the program funders would like to see in the narrative portion of your grant application, usually titled the project narrative. That is the real meat of your application. I included an image here just to kind of show you what you'll see in NOFOs. It shows which section of the narrative corresponds to which section in the review criteria, or what reviewers will be using to review and grade your application. Application review is a really important part of the process, and as such, the NOFO will tell you how the application will be reviewed. As you can see from this example, it provides the information regarding the number of points for each section and the criterion that the reviewers will be using. If there's any special funding priorities or preferences, then that might also be shared in this section. I would highly recommend that as you're writing your responses to what the project narrative sections are asking of you, that you go back and you reference the review criterion as well, to make sure that if a reviewer is reading your application, that they're going to have all the information that they need to give you the maximum amount of points for your application. Important note you'll see in our NOFOs at HRSA is that we've developed an extensive guide called the SF424 application guide that provides detailed instructions for our HRSA NOFOs specifically to help you in preparing and submitting your applications. I definitely encourage you to reference this as you're going along completing a grant application for any HRSA NOFOs. So a little bit more about the review process at HRSA. Each application received by HRSA will go through what's called an objective review. The process is done within our Division of Independent Review with the Office of Federal Assistance Management. HRSA uses health profession subject experts as peer reviewers to objectively evaluate a competitive group of grant applications against the published criteria that I mentioned that's in the HRSA Notice of Funding Opportunity. Reviewers are chosen based on their knowledge, education, experience, and any criteria included in the NOFO that the applicants must respond to. Here is an image of what the application review process looks like for HRSA. And I included this just kind of as your reference. You can take a look at this when the slides go out to you. Actually, I think Kate might have already linked the slides in the chat. So just for us visual learners, something to kind of help in thinking through what the key stages to the HRSA application process looks like, from application and submission, our receipt of your grant application, screening applications, the technical review, which is that objective review that I mentioned just a minute ago, the award determination, all of those key pieces for review that we have. Now, while I'm talking about application reviewing, I mentioned this on Tuesday and I wanted to mention it again. I hope all of y'all would consider becoming a HRSA grant reviewer. We're always looking for folks who have got experience in rural healthcare, understand the rural healthcare landscape. It's a really, really great opportunity to learn more about the grants process at HRSA. You know, it's something that I've heard from folks that becoming a grant reviewer has helped them to write better applications. So if you happen to have time, I think it would really be something to consider. It'd be worth taking a look at. So you can find information on the application process on the slide here and on our HRSA website as well. Just would encourage it. Okay. So now on to some helpful tips, tricks, common mistakes. These slides will be made available to you. So I might not go through everything in full detail, but I wanted to have all of this compiled in the slides as a resource to you, for you to go back and take a look at when you're applying for NOFOs. So couple concepts to share. First is thinking of the 5 R's. This is something we talk about a lot within HRSA. When you're pulling together a really strong grant application, doing the research, recruiting a team, responding to the guidance, reviewing the application, and then revising it as needed. So do the research. This really is paramount. You know, myself included, a lot of us see dollar signs and that just kind of blinds us from really taking a look at that NOFO for what would be expected of us, even if we're eligible. So would really encourage you to take the time to ensure that the NOFO that you're looking at is worth your time. It is, you know, a real time and energy investment when you are implementing a federal grant program. You know, just taking the time to ensure that the requirements of the project or the program are within your organization's capacity, I think is really important. Evaluating that time cost benefit of applying for the federal opportunity. Something else that's on here I didn't mention, study projects that have been awarded in the past. We do make it publicly available when we award grants to folks within the Federal Office of Rural Health Policy and HRSA more broadly. So, you know, if you see a funding opportunity that looks of interest, becomes available, you know, I'd encourage you to take a look and see, well, what have other folks done that have worked out really well? Because it might help you in thinking through your application and what your project might look like to be successful. If it is possible, second R is recruit a team. That is a lot more challenging in rural communities. I know that. But I think if nothing else, having at least 1 to 2 or 3 folks on your team from your organization to take a look at the application, if nothing else. If there's no one to help you draft it, at least having a fresh set of eyes on your application, I think is helpful, just to see if there's anything that you might have missed. On Tuesday, I mentioned how many of our community-based grants have network or consortium requirements. So if that is a requirement of the NOFO, then definitely talking with those network members and making sure that you are all very clear on your roles and your responsibilities, making sure you have any MOUs if those are required. That would be a really important piece to pulling together your grant application. Respond to the guidance. Really making sure that you're going bullet point by bullet point and section by section in that project narrative. Do not assume that the reviewers have any knowledge of anything when it comes to your area, your program, your organization. I really think that's the most important thing as I've looked at grant applications, is ensuring that you have included all of the information in your project narrative that has been asked of you in the notice of funding opportunity. And then review. These are just some of the questions to ask yourself after you've completed your grant application. Have you responded to all of those sections in the NOFO? A big thing too is a lot of NOFOs will ask for different attachments or forms to be completed and submitted as part of the application. So that would be something to consider if that's a work plan, some of your budget information, MOUs. Make sure that you look at that application section in the NOFO to ensure that you've attached everything that you need to have included in there. Does your proposed project address the program purpose that's specified in the NOFO? All of our programs have an intended purpose, something that we're trying to accomplish in those programs. And so making sure that, what you have in your minds for the project that you'd like to implement, that it really matches with what the purpose of the program is that you're applying for with your application. And then I want to include these top 10 tips from HRSA on ensuring that you're submitting a complete and a successful application. So probably going to go through these a little bit more quickly here. But first, start preparing the application as early as you possibly can. Time is of the essence. Like I mentioned, a lot of NOFOs will have about 90 days that they're open. I think sometimes 120. Sometimes 60. It can be a really short period of time. So as soon as you can start on your application, the better, to make sure you have enough time to do everything you need to do and gather all of the information that you might need, and to make it by the due date. Due dates are, to my knowledge, never extended for NOFOs. It would have to be a very rare situation to get any kind of an extension. And even with that, I don't know that it would be much beyond 24 hours of an extension. So really important that you start early so that way you can get things done in time. Make sure that you follow the instructions in the NOFO very carefully. I've said this already, but just another reminder for that. Keep your audience in mind, assuming nothing. Keep that review criteria in mind. That is what those reviewers are basing their review on. That's sort of their guidebook on how to grade and score applications. So that's definitely an area that you want to look at in that notice of funding opportunity. Be brief as best as you can, be concise as best as you can, and definitely be clear in all of the information that you're providing. Kind of with that, be organized and logical. So that way, again, someone who is a total stranger to your organization and your project, that they can read and they can understand logically what you're trying to accomplish with your project. Show evidence of fiscal stability and sound fiscal management. Not sure what else to say on that, but these are federal funds. So, we want to make sure that federal funds are being used responsibly and managed carefully and well. So wherever you're able to, speak to your financial office's abilities to be able to handle federal funds, certainly express that. Pay attention to technical details, as Kate was mentioning earlier, expirations for sam.gov registration. That's really the biggest thing I would say, is just really make sure you're on top of that. I would encourage you that's the very first thing that you do, is take a look at your sam.gov, get registered if you're not already. And then again, registration with grants.gov if you're not already. If you are already, make sure that those are up to date, and that you're keeping those updated annually as well. Be careful in the use of attachments. So do not use attachments for information that is required in your project narrative. Use attachments where attachments are asked for. Again, oftentimes that's going to be a work plan, MOUs, letters of commitment, different things like that. Sometimes attachments are requested to be able to prove eligibility. So like if you're in a rural area or not, but don't use attachments for narrative information that is asked in the NOFO. All of that should be together written out in your project narrative. Print out and carefully proofread and review your electronic application to ensure accuracy and completion. So basically just proofread, get other folks' eyes on it just to make sure that, you know, things are organized well, sounds logical, you're not missing anything. And then submit all information at the same time. These are some of the common mistakes that we see, just to keep in mind. Again, you see the top two there, the two things we see most: not registering with grants.gov, or waiting until the last minute to register. And then there's some hiccups. Expired SAM registration, certainly something we see a lot. Another thing that we tend to see, if all goes well with the more logistical pieces, is applications can be rejected for errors if the applicant did not leave enough time to correct before the deadline. So it could be that you submit your application, but there is something that's missing, and because the due date has already passed, it's just too late. But also just not including the, you know, some of the important information, like for instance, with eligibility, you know, if it's requesting that you have some kind of evidence to show that you are, you know, located in a rural community, and you don't include that, then your application is in the screening process, and just that very initial screening process, it's already going to be counted out because you didn't include that that information. So just make sure that you've got that. Application exceeding page limits, that is a thing. That is something that can happen. NOFOs very clearly state how many pages your maximum amount is allowed to be able to use for your application. So just make note of that, whether it's 30 pages, 40, 50, things to think about. Another thing, I haven't really seen this often, but just a good thing to cross-reference, is applying to the wrong announcement number. So just making sure you're applying to the thing you really want to apply to. So with that was a lot of information. I recognize that. And especially if you're not familiar with any of these processes or with federal grants in general, that might have been a lot. Here's my contact information if you've got questions that kind of float to the surface after we get on the call today. But with the time that we do have left, I would love to take any questions that you might have and hopefully be able to answer them.
Waiting for questions. Thank you so much, Suzanne. I did want to just reiterate, emphasize a couple things that she went over, and things that I've seen in my years of working in rural health and doing grant reviews and such. Is the biggest, you know, of course, make sure you check that you're eligible. And if there's any question on whether you're eligible, reach out to whoever the contact person is that's listed. And make sure you, if you have the opportunity to, like FORHP will always do a TA webinar, so that you can get some more information, join those and ask the questions you need to ask. Look at those requirements. Suzanne had pointed out, I know one time we had somebody who was moving forward to apply to an opportunity and had all this stuff put together, but didn't dig into the requirements that they had to be part of a network. It was a network opportunity, and so didn't have those partners in alignment yet. And so that was pretty much null and void for them because they didn't have the time to pull that together. I would recommend if you have the time, I know everybody's super busy, but if somebody at your organization has the time and interest to become a grant reviewer, it's a great way to learn how to be a better grant writer as well. So a really good opportunity there. And then the last thing, and this seems so obvious, is, but I saw it a lot when I used to do some SHIP grant reviews, is to make sure that you're following instructions. As somebody who's reviewing grants, if you want everything to really be kind of apples to apples, that's why those very clear instructions are there. And so that you are looking, objectively at everything, and you'll see some grants sometime that come in that have good information in them, but they didn't follow the instructions that were laid out in the requirements of the grant opportunity. And so they're kind of null and void, it's almost a toss out after that. So those are just a couple things I wanted to emphasize. I know Suzanne went over them, but just to re-emphasize them and things that I've seen in my years working in different grant opportunities. And I am gonna put in, Suzanne went over this last time, but another great place to look for funding opportunities is the RHI Hub. And they will have, it's all rural focused, and they'll include opportunities from HRSA on there. But it's a great place. They have everything very well organized, and you can look even by topic, by state. In case sometimes, if the federal website might, be overwhelming for you sometimes. So that's another great place to check. So anyway, I will be quiet and see if there's any questions now.
I'm gonna pipe up and then I'll be quiet. Thank you, Kate. Really great thing about RHI Hub too. I mentioned this Tuesday, but they don't only have federal funding. And that's why I think it's so awesome to search on RHI Hub, because you also might be able to find more localized funding or state level funding. So if grants.gov feels like too much, and even if our HRSA website feels like too much, or you just want to know about, grants more broadly, not just within HRSA, then I totally encourage RHI Hub too.
As we're waiting for those questions to roll in, I'm gonna roll out the post polling.
Very punny, Caleb. As folks are finishing answering those questions, I did want to mention too that I did include a couple appendices on the slides, just as some additional resources for you. First is some funding opportunities just within FORHP that we're anticipating, and a couple other resources that might help you when it comes to preparing your grant application. If you need data, we have an awesome data warehouse on HRSA's website, data.hrsa.gov, just other technical resources and things like that. Another thing I'll mention too is your notice of funding opportunities, as I've mentioned, have your agency contacts in there from HRSA. So the program contact and the financial contact. You are definitely more than welcome to reach out to that program contact on your own. I also will mention that I know we've had some instances where, you've had questions and you've asked internally to the folks at the center. And just recently, Caleb looped me in on someone that had a question on eligibility, and then I was able to loop them in to the person within my office who works on that program. So, really use all your resources here for getting your questions answered. I'm really happy to help you get connected with folks as much as I can too. Well, hearing no questions and seeing no questions, I just want to thank y'all so much for letting me be here and share some time with y'all today. I really hope this was helpful. And actually, I think a question just came through. Are there webinars available from other federal government funding entities, such as EDA, DOL, etc.? Yeah, there should be. What I'm not sure of is if we have any kind of like a database that shows whenever they have scheduled webinars. With every notice of funding opportunity, there is always a technical assistance webinar for that opportunity specifically. The information for that webinar is found within the notice of funding opportunity with the Zoom link or whatever platform they're using for that, date, time, and those are always recorded and made available. You can reach out to the program contact if you happen to miss the TA webinar and want that recording. As far as more general webinars for federal funding, surely there are, but I might need to look and see if we have any kind of a schedule or something like that for other federal agencies. But within HRSA, we do regular grants 101 webinars and things like that. So I'm sure other federal agencies have their comparison. Any other questions or thoughts? All righty. Well, if y'all ever have questions, just please feel free to reach out. I'm really happy to be here as a resource to y'all as much as I can be. And thanks to Caleb, Kate, and the rest of the folks at the center for everything that you do every day and for helping to coordinate these webinars.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Kate, and everyone who showed up. You'll be receiving an email later with the resources on where to find the slides and the recordings. If you have any other questions in the meantime, please feel free to email us and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thanks, Suzanne.
Thanks, y'all. Appreciate you.